Yeah, I got a few people watching. Hey, y'all. But it's a live Ask Me Anything, so I got some questions here that people have sent in. Some of these are from the last one that I did a couple weeks ago. These are just a way for you to get to know me a little bit, me to share a little bit about myself. I'll keep it short. Hopefully you are on your lunch break and you just need something to do. So you can listen to me yak for a little bit here. Number one, this is a question that's come in from someone. Number one, what is your pet peeve? I think I hide this pretty well, unless I'm around my family, because my family here, they know it all too well. But probably my biggest pet peeve is the sound that people make when they're eating. I think if I'm around people that are crunching loudly, or if I can hear like the saliva juices smacking and moving around in their mouth while they're eating, it drives me absolutely bonkers. I don't know what it is about it. It's a character flaw. I'm not the quietest eater in the world either. But for some reason, hearing people chew, it's just really, really, I don't always mean. My wife is saying she's crunching right now. And so I'm glad that you are at your work crunching instead of right here beside me, because that is my biggest pet peeve for sure. Also want to let y'all know, if you would, since I got a few people watching, if you haven't liked or followed our Facebook page, make sure you go do that. We have a holiday push that we're doing to 1,000 likes on our Facebook page. And so make sure that you help us out with that. If you've already liked or followed our Facebook page, I think there's a way that you can invite your friends to like it as well. I might be wrong on that. I'm still trying to figure out the social media stuff, but make sure that you share our content and you like our content, and that you invite other people to like our page as well. We're trying to get up to 1,000. We've added 100 people just in the past week, so we're up to about 750. And so if we can get to 1,000 by the end of the year, that is our goal. So make sure you help us out with that. Number two, what 3 things would you have on a desert island? This is an interesting one because I never know if it's desert island or deserted island. If it's a deserted island, I think I would take stuff a little differently than if it was a desert island, meaning that it was hot and sandy and there was no food. And of course, this is what 3 things. And so obviously I would take my family and some of my loved ones, but this says things. So I'm gonna talk about things. Number 1, I would probably take my espresso machine because I think I have a problem. It's become part of my ritual now to do espresso every morning. My sister-in-law got me an espresso machine for Christmas last year. Yeah, I guess it was Christmas last year. And I think I've used that thing once, if not twice, every single day this year. So probably my espresso machine. What else would I take? I would take my phone. I would take my phone because smartphones are basically everything. I would take my phone so that I could read my Bible, so that I could look up things. Hopefully I have internet access on a deserted island. I could watch Netflix or Amazon Prime. I could play my puzzle games or anything like that. So I would take my smartphone. And then third, and my wife definitely knows this about me as well, I would take some sort of fan. Because it doesn't really matter where I am. It doesn't matter how cold someplace is. I gotta have a fan going at all times, especially when I'm sleeping. Give me a like if you agree with that. You gotta have a fan when you're sleeping. It doesn't matter if it's 60 degrees in your house. You gotta have a fan blowing on you when you're sleeping. And so if I am on a deserted island or a desert island, you better believe I'm gonna have a fan with me, because one of the most miserable things in the world is trying to fall asleep without a fan. So those are my 3 things: my espresso machine, my phone, and a fan. Let's see some other questions. Who in the Bible, other than Jesus, would you want to meet and why? That's a good question. I would probably want to meet John the Apostle. There's a lot of people I would want to meet, but I would probably want to meet John the Apostle. I'm a big fan of the Gospel of John, and the approach to telling the Jesus story that the Apostle John has in his Gospel is very fascinating to me. If you've read the scriptures at all, if you've read particularly the Gospels, you know that Matthew, Mark, and Luke tell very similar stories. They tell the stories in very similar ways. And John is kind of an outlier in that regard. John has a much more spiritualized and mystic approach to his narrative about Jesus, which relies heavily on Jewish imagery, but also in sort of Greco-Roman philosophy and kind of Judaic philosophy as well. The reason I would want to talk to John is, one, because that's incredibly fascinating to me, but two, because John was a fisherman. And so the guy's he's not an educated, he spent 3 years with Jesus. I imagine that's an education, but he's not super sophisticated. You read the Gospel of John, especially in the original language, it's not a particularly sophisticated book linguistically, but theologically it is incredibly deep, and it's incredibly robust in the way that he talks about Jesus. And so I would want to pick his brain about that and just be like, dude, what gives? How'd you get so smart about Jesus when you didn't even go to school about it? So let's see, got time for a few more here. If you could listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be? Don't have any songs necessarily. I don't have like a favorite song or favorite band. I got like kind of like favorite styles of music, I guess. When I'm running, I like to get on Pandora and listen to some like rap stations, because there's something about the rhythm in rap that is really easy to run to for me for whatever reason. When I'm lifting heavy weights in my garage or at the gym, back when that was a thing, I'd like to listen to a lot of heavy metal, even like really hard dubstep stuff, just because there's something about the intensity of that music that really helps me when I'm lifting weights. If I'm just doing like yard work or whatever, or if I'm driving or just hanging out, or just want to listen to something, I don't know. I listen to, I don't know what kind of style of music this is, but I have like the Black Keys channel on Pandora that I listen to quite a bit, which is like the Black Keys and the Raconteurs and the White Stripes and all that stuff. And so I really like that kind of music, which I'd probably do the Black Keys Pandora station if I was going to have to listen to something for the rest of my life. So not a song, but a Pandora station. Hopefully that works. What is your favorite movie? Okay, this might be kind of obscure, but my favorite movie is actually an older movie that I think came out like 98 maybe, or maybe mid-90s. I don't remember exactly, but it's a movie called The Game with Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. And it's one of those movies that you can't really talk too much about without spoiling it, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. Movies that you think it's one thing when you start watching it, and it's something completely different at the end. Sorry, my wireless thing keeps saying that it's having trouble connecting. We got a new wireless router a couple days ago, and it's causing us fits. So we're supposed to solve all these problems, and it's created more. You know how that goes. Anyway, The Game. And yeah, so it starts one way, and then it kind of ends, and you realize, oh, the whole thing that I was watching was completely different. And it's one of those movies that you learn something new every time you watch it, which I like those kinds of movies quite a bit. And I've found that that's really influenced the way that I teach and preach. I like to preach sermons where I start talking about something at the beginning of the sermon is one way, but then by the time I end the sermon, it kind of sheds a new light on what I started with talking about. And so it's even kind of influenced how I preach. I really like that kind of turn, not just with turn of phrase, but also just like kind of conceptual turning that happens in The Game. And that's really influenced the way I preach and teach as well. Who is your favorite author? That's a good one. I will say, I'm for whatever reason, I'm really drawn to like a lot of the famous novels from the Victorian area. So a lot of Charles Dickens stuff. I like to read Christmas Carol every year on my Kindle. Great Expectations is a great book. Oliver Twist is a great book. So I really like Dickens, and stuff from around that time. Poetry with Swinburne and Tennyson and stuff like that. Probably my favorite series ever is the Sherlock Holmes stories. And so Arthur Conan Doyle, who's a fellow Scot. I have Scottish heritage in my line, and so Doyle was from Edinburgh, and so yeah. But I really like the Sherlock Holmes stuff. What's fascinating to me about the Sherlock Holmes stuff is that detective novels were not really a thing before Sherlock Holmes, and there was all of this interest around kind of criminal investigation and death and murder, and how some of that with Doyle tied into like spiritualism and like seances and like weird stuff. Just a lot of weird stuff that was happening in the Victorian era. There's a great book by Judith Flanders called The Invention of Murder. I'm realizing how dark. This is a fantastic book called The Invention of Murder by Judith Flanders. And in this book, she basically kind of chronicles how detective novels became a thing. Like how there was a turn in like the Victorian era where people became fascinated with crime drama, basically, in its earliest forms. And so now you have whole channels dedicated to that on TV, crime dramas and procedurals and all sorts of stuff like that. But like Arthur Conan Doyle and some of his contemporaries really paved the way for that, because that was kind of happening culturally at the time. And he kind of capitalized on that and kind of created this detective superhero basically in Sherlock Holmes. So yeah, that's probably my favorite series. So probably Conan Doyle or Charles Dickens, something like that. Oh, let's see, where are we on time? I'm going to answer one more if that's okay. What is your favorite vacation you've been on? Well, that's a good one. There've been a lot of not a lot of vacations, but it's like every vacation I go on is incredibly memorable, and I really have a good time. The one that sticks out to me, and if my wife is still watching, maybe she can comment here. I forget exactly where it was, but we took a trip to Spain, my wife and I, and we were going to stay down on the coast in a hotel that was down on the coast, but we flew into Madrid, which is right in the middle of Spain. And we flew in, and it was an overnight flight from Newark, and so we were going to kind of spend the night that we landed. We were going to spend that day and that night there in Madrid to kind of get our bearings and then head out the next morning down to the coast. And so we actually stayed in this little small village that was right outside of Madrid. It was up on a hillside that looked down over the city. And we stayed in this, I hesitate to say hotel. It wasn't really a hotel, but it was almost like a bed and breakfast. But it was one or two rooms in this jail, this like town jail that, it was near Toledo, Emily says, yeah. But it was in this town jail that this family had converted into like a bed and breakfast. And so you actually went down into the basement of this old jail building to eat your dinner. There's like a really nice restaurant down there. And then we stayed in, I guess, what were the cells? I don't know, that they had like transformed into these really nice rooms. But I just remember that that day and that evening was, we were like the only tourists in the whole town. And it was like, nobody was there. It was just kind of the townspeople. And so one of the nights I'd go to like the local bar and like just old men at the bar talking about God knows what. I don't speak Spanish well enough to know what they were talking about, and I walked up the hill, and there was like this old church looking. I'm a sucker for old churches. If you know me, I really am a sucker for old church buildings. And there's just this old church that looked out over Madrid, and so I sat on a park bench out there and just kind of took in the sights and took in the moment. And that whole trip to Spain was incredible. But I think of all the vacations, the moments that I've kind of experienced through some of the vacations that I've had the privilege of going on, that's the one that really sticks with me, is that one night in this very random town, I guess, or really more like a village right outside of Madrid. So anyway, hey, it's about 12:15, so I hope you guys are enjoying your lunch break. Thank you so much for watching. Remember that you can like our Facebook page. I just hit that little thumbs up icon. That really helps us out. We have a holiday push towards 1,000 followers, 1,000 likes on our Facebook page by the end of the year. And so if you don't like the Vine of Northwest Arkansas Facebook page yet, make sure you hit that thumbs up icon. And if you know other people that would like to follow what we're doing, whether they're local here to Northwest Arkansas, or maybe they're somewhere abroad, but they're just interested in what we're doing and supporting us along the way, then make sure you invite them to help us out as well by liking that Facebook page. We want to get to 1,000 likes by the end of the year. I think we're at 750 now, which is good. We've added about 100 people over this past week, which is awesome. And if you're one of those, welcome. So glad that you're seeing this. But yeah, this is just one more time for me to share a little bit more about myself. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. Hopefully you resonate a little bit with some of the ways that I've answered these questions, and you know me a little bit better now. So go and rent The Game with Michael Douglas and Sean Penn, and watch that tonight. I promise you won't be disappointed. Get back to me with how awesome it is. And yeah, make sure you leave comments. Any other questions you want me to answer in future AMAs, leave those in the comments, and I will see you later. All right, y'all. Bye-bye.